So we're going to turn it over to Penelope, who's going to do an evaluation of our meeting tonight. Thank you, Penelope, for volunteering.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you all for inviting me this evening, and I'm delighted to be your general evaluator. It will be my role to make comments about the meeting as a whole and also to bring up the watchtowers for the meeting to give their individual evaluations. So let me start with that. Could I ask, please, the timer to put the timing in the chat so that we can save some time? Just type your report into the chat if you would, please. So our first speech this evening by Maurice, my Toastmasters superheroes, is going to be evaluated by Jackie. That timing is 2 to 3 minutes timer. And Jackie, I would like to turn the floor over to you to give your evaluation of Maurice's speech.
Thank you. Maurice's speech was titled, it was from Humorous Speaking, and it was the introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. So as far as clarity, we were all very clear about what Maurice's speech was going to be about because it was in his title. He used a lot of eye contact because he wanted to make sure we were laughing, which many of us were, and I think we met that for him. The gestures, I think from what I could see from Maurice's shoulders up, there were some gestures, and he did have us participate, especially at the end. He was very comfortable. I call Maurice our veteran speaker. He speaks very well. As you can see, like I said earlier, he was our contest winner. So he is very well aware of how to give a speech. His delivery is very well. It was very interesting. I did not even know Maurice had mentors. However, I did know that he was president. He was not, I think that someone chose that role for him. The person who is not here, that is one of our members, Vicky. And he has been such a good president that he probably will continue to be the president into the next year. But you can see he's very interested in having those titles behind his name. So we're going to make sure that president title stays there as long as possible. The topic was really good because we all are working on being better Toastmasters and having those titles behind our name because that's what Toastmasters is about. It's about learning how to be a better leader, learning how to be a better communicator. And for some people like Maurice and myself, it's very rewarding to get those titles. And sometimes they even come with little ribbons and or little awards so that it motivates you to continue on your Toastmasters journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. And now I would like to call on Raul to evaluate Bharat's speech.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and especially Bharat. As you probably all saw, Bharat is a very knowledgeable and very educated individual. The title of his speech was Interview Practice. And the goal of the project was for him to practice the skill needed to connect with an unfamiliar audience. You cannot ask for more unfamiliar than going to an interview. However, the problem that you may have with the format of that speech is to present yourself to that audience. If you're trying to present yourself, you also have to connect, and that requires for you to have some kind of a way to draw in your audience. If they're trying to find out Bharat's qualification, he did that very well. He was able to give us all his credentials and also all his accomplishments. That he does very, very well. Granted that there's some terms that we may not be familiar with, but if he's being hired, definitely that company or that corporation should be aware of those credentials. I myself was not aware of some of them, but like I said before, if he's being hired, the hiring pool definitely should be aware of who they are trying to interview and for them to be familiar with some of the terms that we would present. However, if it is not a firm that may not be familiar with those credentials, then you have to make sure that he goes and explain it to them. Now, that was very well done. What could Barrett do to connect even better with his audience? The first thing is you have to watch out that you don't hide behind your hand. I noticed that you had your hand pretty much all the time in front of you, and most of the time it was blocking part of your face. You were at a point you had your hands right in front of your mouth, and they didn't know who was really speaking. So you have to watch out that if you're trying to connect with an audience, that you reach out to them. And then I know you may be doing gestures, but control, especially in the environment that we are now, you have to make sure that your hand is not blocking your message or distracting your audience. But overall, you can see that Barrett was able to connect with that audience. I would have preferred that he does it by asking questions of them or putting rhetorical questions. But overall, he was able to give us specific benefits of the amount of money that he saved and the recognition that he had in Toastmasters, and that was very well done. So Barrett, please, except for those minor things about the presentation, you're on your way to connect with your audience. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Raul. Okay, moving back to the meeting as a whole, taking it from the top, the meeting began, I believe, right on time. I was a little disappointed that there was no agenda, either in the chat or presented. And I admit that I did come a minute or so late, but it was already rolling and there was nothing in the chat. The welcome was very warm by Maurice, and everyone, members and guests, had a moment to introduce themselves, which helps, especially in a meeting that is not 75 people. It helps everybody feel a little more warmly linked together. Jackie gave a very good introduction of Maurice's speech with the objectives. I did not hear Raul, and maybe I just missed it, give an introduction of Bharat's speech with his objectives or which speech and path he was working from. Perhaps I just missed that. I apologize if I did. I think whenever there's technology being used by a speaker, the speaker should always, before the meeting starts, make sure that the technology is up and easily available and running and can just click in so that it never detracts from the meeting or the speaker's power. The next area of the meeting was actually the table topic section run by Jackie. I'm always a firm believer that table topics should be that you call on that you ask a question and then you call on somebody rather than asking for volunteers, because the purpose of table topics is to get people with that adrenaline pumping so that they really learn to answer on the spot, so that they are familiar with that feeling and can get more relaxed into things like you would face in a job interview when somebody asks you a question and you have to respond right away. This format of table topics was very warm and very friendly, and certainly by the end, it really became a conversation. So it was a very nice way for guests and members to get to meet each other and get to know a little bit about each other tonight. Jackie gave a wonderfully encouraging evaluation, but I didn't hear her make the suggestions to the speaker of ways that he could improve. And I think that's what we're all here for, is strong suggestions for improvement. Encouragement is great, but he needed very specific things. Raul was an example of that. He gave very, very well-rounded and specific ideas to Bharat, starting with encouragement of what he was doing well, and then very good points for him to take forward, because this is a real-life situation. Bharat desperately needs to do well in this interview, and Raul spent time to really show him specifically how he could improve that impression and how he could ace the interview, and had lots of very good ideas on that, and also then ended on a very positive note. I thought that allowing time in the chat for people to comment on the speakers was wonderful. I might suggest that you do that 1 minute after each speaker while everybody's mind is fresh. Since this club doesn't do its evaluations right after the speaker, it's a little harder, but at least giving people that minute to put their impressions in the chat and give your evaluator time to make their notes before you move on to the second speaker, even if they're not going to present their evaluation, I think could be extremely helpful. Overall, this has been a lot of fun. June 21st is a Monday. Is that really your meeting day? Oh,
Yes,
okay. Great.
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Every week on a Monday or Thursday, and because when Monday's holiday, yeah.
That's fine. I just wanted to double check. And by the way, for those Toastmasters in the room, especially Raul, yes, I've already told Maurice that I have to really meet with him because he's completely messed up on how to get his DTM at this point. So don't panic. He won't do that. He has no intention of filing all the wrong forms. We'll get him through to his DTM if it kills us all. So Maurice, thank you again very much for inviting me this evening. Thank